That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, gonna be excited to get some people upset. I understand that everybody wants to see my favorite rookies. Go draft these guys. And, you know, my favorite thing to do is be the wet blanket, to talk about why rookie X is going to disappoint year one, to talk about why you shouldn't draft Jamar Chase and you should trade the pick and get CeeDee Lamb anyway. You know, that's what I like doing. So we're going to go through and look at a couple rookies in this draft class that I have a feeling may end up being overvalued. But of course, before we get into it, you know what I'm going to ask? Let's get this video to 500 likes. Please help us get there. Also, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, but I can tell that everybody here is already subscribed. And also, go down there, leave a comment, whether or not you're letting me know a rookie you think is going to be overdrafted, whether or not you're telling me exactly why I am so dumb with one of these players. It doesn't matter. I just love seeing the conversation that y'all have with each other down there in the comment section. I try to add in as much as I can. So please make sure you give me your opinion, because I'm giving you over 25 minutes of my opinion every single day with these videos. Please go down there and give me 25 seconds of yours with a quick comment. But I think that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into a couple of these rookies. And let's lead it off with someone that we have talked about being overrated a lot. And we've had a lot of pushback with this as well. Let's go over to Jameson Williams. And now with Jameson Williams, I understand this is a wide receiver that if you watched, just the national championship, the entire discussion around I want to say first half of football was this wide receiver. He is going to be the first wide receiver off the board in the NFL draft. He is going to be the best wide receiver in this draft class. I'll say they mainly say that because they're trying to just stir some excitement around a player. If he would have stayed healthy, that wouldn't have been him. Don't think you're getting a massive discount on Jameson Williams. If he stayed healthy, he was not going to be going ahead of Garrett Wilson. He was not going ahead of Trey Lombards. Don't fool yourselves here, okay? So that's the first thing I want to address. I know the national media coverage about this wide receiver was, he would have been the number one guy off the board. He would have. Poor guy, tearing his AC. Yes, he's going to go in the first round. He would have gone in the first round. Probably still will. But don't think that all of a sudden, he is just representing a massive value in Dynasty because of this injury. Because what I have seen, his price really hasn't changed at all since the injury. I'd imagine he probably loses a few $1 million in the NFL draft, and I am very sorry for him. I'm just speaking from a dynasty value perspective and where he's going to be going in dynasty drafts and not the NFL draft. Now, y'all know the dynasty community is pretty damn good at evaluating wide receivers every single year. I make fun of so many people thinking that they can go and watch film and tell you who the next great quarterback's going to be. It's so funny watching the dynasty community go all in on Dwayne Haskins, all in on Justin Fields, and laugh at NFL scouts for taking Justin Herbert and Josh Allen in the top 10 as if the people in the dynasty community know everything. No, quarterback evaluation, very bad. But wide receivers, on the other hand, a ton of people have been able to successfully identify metrics that allow us to view these wide receivers in a very particular light. And while combining that with NFL draft capital as a cross-reference, you're able to have a decent hit rate on a lot of these rookie receivers. So with Jameson Williams, I'm confident coming out before the NFL draft happens. And I'm confident saying I don't like this profile. I can understand how his elite speed may translate to the NFL, and it may help in NFL offense. If he is able to go in and he's able to stretch the field, very similar to why the Las Vegas Raiders, with the perfect example ever, decided to take Henry Ruggs over CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs over Justin Jefferson in the 2020 draft class, because that speed will represent a considerable amount of value from an NFL standpoint compared to a dynasty league that won't transition over to the volume that wide receiver is getting. I can see that argument with Jameson Williams. I could see a team taking him in the first round and that being a good pick for the NFL organization and maybe not necessarily for dynasty. Because if you look at like the underlying volume that this wide receiver had throughout his entire collegiate career, it does not scream that this is someone that we need to be worried about drafting in the first round. I mean, just going, year by year. In 2019, his true freshman season, he goes to a loaded Ohio State roster. He goes to a team that has Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and a handful of other 4-star wide receiver prospects. So he ends up being, let me count this out, on a per game basis. We did all the math here. The wide receiver 6 in receiving yards on a per game basis. I mean, the guy who led the team was Chris Olave with 64.61. And then you actually had Jameson Williams down there at 28. Now, I want to put a massive disclaimer out here. He only played 4 games. It was off a very small sample. So, of course, it's pretty damn hard to put too much stock into this season. And I can't come out here and be completely honest and say that this season was a failure for someone like Jameson Williams. I think if this was a wide receiver prospect that I would like, I would easily be the first person making excuses, saying he wasn't healthy, saying he was playing one of the hardest depth charts in college football. So I'm going to give him the pass for year 1, because if I was advocating for you to go draft this wide receiver, I feel like I would give him the pass in that scenario. So we should be unbiased here. And with him playing such a small sample of games and with the talent on this Ohio State roster, he failed his freshman season, but I don't want to put too much weight into that. The true sophomore year is where I begin to have an issue, because this is the season that, based on all our historical research, you need to break out your second year in college. Whether or not you are a redshirt freshman or a true sophomore, so much is key in terms of historical hit rates. And it is a night and day difference for players that were able to go out there and all of a sudden command 25% of their team's college receiving yards their sophomore year compared to someone who does not meet that threshold. Now, Jameson Williams doesn't come close. Can't even get on the field. I mean, he goes out there in 2020 and he accounts for less than 10% of the receiving yards on a per game basis for this Ohio State offense. He averages 25.6 receiving yards per game. He can't get on the field while you have Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson there. And I would be willing to write him that pass. Trust me. I mean, I have written guys like Devontae Smith last year at Alabama is the perfect example. We looked at that production profile and said, hell, he didn't break out really until his true junior year. I mean, he wasn't dominant at an early age, but it didn't really matter in the case of Devontae Smith because he's playing alongside Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and Jalen Waddle, and he's younger than those wide receivers. So if he's younger than those wide receivers and he's getting on the field and producing to a similar level with them, and they're all first-round draft picks, I'm willing to write him the pass. And when we see him then all of a sudden go to Alabama and put up one of the best college wide receiver seasons of all time, his senior year, I'm willing to just look at that and say, clearly he was parked behind, and I don't want to say parked behind because Jameson Williams was parked behind Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, whereas Devontae Smith was on the field with those players, producing to a similar level, actually a higher level his true junior season than those other options, but he just wasn't able to be the dominant wide receiver. He was more of a part-time player, even though he was leading that team in receiving yards on a per game basis. So all this is to say that I'm fine if you go out there and you demonstrate the ability to get on the field with these elite wide receiver prospects, but you don't have to dominate. You just have to get on the field. You just have to show something. He's unable to do that. You have Chris Olave, on the other hand, going in the same wide receiver room, averaging almost 40% of the passing offense is accounted for by Chris Olave this season. He goes out there and has 104 receiving yards per game. He's dominant. Him and Garrett Wilson just make it where Jameson Williams, he can't get on the field. And then he ends up having to transfer to Alabama. And if he transfers to Alabama, and then all of a sudden we see that Devontae Smith full-on breakout. Like, let me pull up Devontae Smith's production at Alabama that final season, and let's kind of compare it to Jameson Williams here, because I know this is the comparison that you're going to get because he didn't have that elite level breakout until then. Well, Smith ended up with 1,200 receiving yards. Let's say this real quick. 1,200 receiving yards in an offense with Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs his junior season with all those wide receivers there. But that's already so much more impressive than what you got with Jameson Williams. And then when those wide receivers left and he had the room to himself, he had close to 2,000 receiving yards. He had over 1,800 receiving yards in only 13 games played. So you saw that full-on dominance, where when Jameson Williams goes over to Alabama, he's able to be the wide receiver one, but you don't see anything close to the same level of dominance where he only gets to 30.9% of his team's overall passing production. So I don't see it. I understand that a lot of people want to come out here and say, oh, we're getting a massive discount based on a severe injury. No, he's going to be missing rookie minicamp, training camp, the preseason, most likely. And he's most likely going to have that injury linger into the beginning part of his year. So he's already going to be, behind everybody else with his development. And his production profile is really nothing special. So coming off a significant injury, not having the early breakout age, not being able to get on the field at an early age, and then when he finally does transfer, yeah, he has some nice totals because he plays a total of 15 games. It's nothing that I want to get too excited for. Jameson Williams, someone I'm just completely out on. Literally look at Chris Olave. That same year, 2020, the same exact age for both wide receivers. Chris Olave has 104 receiving yards on a per game basis compared to Jameson Williams at 25. Same exact situation, same exact offense, same exact context. He's not coming off a significant injury. He should be selected higher in the NFL draft. The Dynasty community is overthinking this one. And going over to our next wide receiver, I think that people are getting excited about the name. I don't know what people are getting excited about. Skye Moore. Okay, so with Skye Moore, we covered a couple other wide receivers that, guys like John Tolbert, just the exact same profile. However, Skye Moore is all of a sudden, I'm getting comments saying, can I take this player in the middle of the second round? In a one quarterback format, sure, fine. Do whatever the hell you want. It's one quarterback format. Superflex, no, I can't consider him anywhere close to where you're talking about. Now, I understand that this is a player that comes out, breaks out at a very early age. With Skye Moore, he gets 61 receiving yards on a per game basis his true freshman season. And then after that, he jumps it up to 77. So yeah, it's a cute 25% and 27% of his team's college receiving yards. And he actually has an excuse to not be that productive in this offense in 2020. And that's because Dwayne Eskridge decided to just kind of jump over there to the wide receiver position. And Dwayne Eskridge, in the same exact offense, playing alongside Skye Moore, yes, at an older age, but still just started playing receiver, went out there and put up 128 receiving yards a game in the same offense the same year compared to Skye Moore his sophomore year at 77. Then Skye Moore, yes, he does take that next jump up. He then gets up to 106 receiving yards on a per game basis once Dwayne Eskridge goes over to Seattle and gets selected in the second round of the NFL draft. But he's never able to get to where Dwayne Eskridge was, whether you're looking at just the percent of the overall offense that he accounts for, whether you're looking at overall counting numbers. So if we're looking at Dwayne Eskridge as a receiving prospect that's going to have a significantly better athletic profile that got drafted in the second round of the NFL draft, Skye Moore going late third, beginning of the fourth, not going in the second. Dwayne Eskridge, second round of the NFL draft. Elite athleticism, probably one of the best landing spots you could ask for in the Seattle Seahawks offense with Russell Wilson. Dwayne Eskridge last year going in the third, fourth round of rookie drafts. However, we are supposed to be buying into a wide receiver that was less productive on the same offense. That's going to be less athletic. That's going to go later in the NFL draft, and that we don't know what the situation's going to be like. And this wide receiver is being sold as a potential second round pick. I would rather take that pick that you were going to select Skye Moore with and trade it for Dwayne Eskridge. Just a thought here. I can guarantee you that you're going to do that. Even in 2022 best ball drafts, like redraft leagues, I see Skye Moore going, and Skye Moore, I just see nothing separating him from those other wide receivers like Tolbert a little bit later on. And now let's go over to a quarterback in this draft class. And of course, this is just going to be for Superflex. Talking in a one quarterback format, nobody's drafting him high at all. Carson Strong. Now with Carson Strong, very similar to what we were looking at, say, with someone like Mac Jones last year. Now, Mac Jones, hits, and bravo for everybody who drafted Mac Jones. You hit on a rookie quarterback, but did his dynasty price go through the roof? Not really. I mean, if you're looking at the price point of Mac Jones from his rookie year to now, it hasn't changed dramatically at all. And the reason for this is his points per game. I mean, while he was good from an NFL standpoint, from a fantasy football standpoint, that simply just wasn't the case. This is a quarterback that has no rushing upside, and very similar. Carson Strong is in that same exact boat. If you were looking at his entire career in Nevada, he has negative 305 rushing yards. Now, let me fill you in on why this is the case. And simply, I mean, sacks are negative yards in college. So this tells us that Carson Strong has no rushing upside in the slightest. He's never going to rush for 50 rushing yards if he gets the opportunity to start. And as it stands now, we don't even know if he will get that starting job opportunity because he's projected to go in the middle of the second round in the NFL draft. And I know maybe our brain's broken a little bit here. We just saw Jalen Hurts go in the middle of the second round. All of a sudden, Jalen Hurts starting for the Philadelphia Eagles, being a quarterback one in fantasy. I loved Jalen Hurts when he was going in the third round of 2020 rookie drafts because even though it was unlikely that he started in the NFL, we knew that from a fantasy football perspective, that if Jalen Hurts were to start, then all of a sudden you can start him in fantasy 100% of the games because that rushing upside. Carson Strong, however, would have to overcome the obstacle of probably not going to get a starting job anytime soon. And if he does get that starting job, he's going to be on a very short leash. But more importantly than anything, even if he overcomes that, you still probably aren't going to be able to put him in your starting lineup. He's probably going to be a Davis Mills type player from last year. So even if he flashes as Davis Mills did, what is your investment looking like on Davis Mills now? Davis Mills, I'll admit, probably a good one. You took him in the fourth round last year. Now you can get a second. Well, if people are thinking about taking Carson Strong in the second round now, are they taking him closest to a ceiling? I'm off of Carson Strong. And our next player is going to be Zamir White, who is a former 5-star prospect. I mean, number 1 running back in the country coming out of high school, which we've discussed before. I mean, I actually did a college, I don't want to say thesis. I mean, I spent my entire biostatistics semester while everybody was doing research on vaccines, medicine, yada, 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 like freaking nerds. We were doing Dynasty Fantasy Football research to present. Yes, I'd sweet talk the teacher to give us a decent grade, but nonetheless, we already identified that those 5-star running back prospects have a decent hit rate from going just in terms of looking at them being 5-star prospects in high school to the NFL. Very surprising. Now, with Zamir White, goes to Georgia, gets parked behind DeAndre Swift in 2019, not expecting anything, a true freshman season. And honestly, at the running back position, unlike wide receiver, at running back, doesn't really matter if you produce year one. We are more so looking for just a handful of different boxes. And he does get the opportunity in 2020. Once DeAndre Swift goes to Detroit, he gets 14.5 carries per game. And yards per carry, I really don't want to center any analysis around yards per carry because it's a very bad way to evaluate running backs for a multitude of reasons. But I think it's worth at least mentioning in this one instance when there's such a sharp difference between these two guys, in that with Zamir White averages 5.4 yards per carry in 2020, and his backfield mate in James Cook is up there at 6.7. And more importantly, with Zamir White, he averages about half a reception a game compared to James Cook being at 2 receptions a game. So what this tells us, and this is what I care about, is Zamir White really doesn't have much receiving upside. I mean, he is not being used as a receiver at Georgia, as we have seen other receiving options like DeAndre Swift. They decided to use DeAndre Swift very often in the receiving game while he was in Georgia. Same thing with a player like Todd Gurley. And then we go to 2021. And as I've said, I don't want everybody to think the takeaway here is I'm telling you to avoid Zamir White because his yards per carry. but it's just worth being brought up when there is that back-to-back pretty large difference between these two running backs when Zamir White has 5.4 yards per carry and James Cook has 6.4. So you see that difference yet again. But more importantly, you just see, James Cook being the guy used in the receiving game, gets 19 receiving yards on a per game basis. And also what's interesting is Georgia decided to deploy both these running backs in the red zone. You actually had 11 total touchdowns for Zamir White, and you had 11 total touchdowns for James Cook at the same time. So if they're playing the same amount of games and James Cook is actually the guy, I don't care too much about the yards per carry. I mainly care about the fact that he's getting usage in the red zone and he was involved in the receiving game over Zamir White. I personally would prefer James Cook over Zamir White in this draft class if we were talking about a PPR format in particular. Now, I think that's all I got for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really hope you got something from it. Please go down there, drop a like on the video, leave a comment, letting me know why I am so stupid. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Hope you have a great day.